operates in the same way. You got the horses and you got the jockeys. You got, or better yet, to use a more accurate analogy, you got the pimps and then you got the hookers. Yeah. Right? Yeah, and so where does that come from? Think about this. Okay. If you are renting, if you're renting an apartment, then you are the horse, your landlord is the jockey. I know a lot of people, and now Oakland's an interesting place to talk about. We talk about real estate prices, right? We see what's going on, gentrification, all of that. I'm following all of that real close. I don't want to talk about the cost of, across the bridge either. Okay? So you got, so I have people all the time that tell me, I will get a house, but I can't afford it. Okay, I get that, I understand that. And I'm not going to pretend like that's an easy thing to do. But I explain to people, I say, well, how much do you pay in rent? You know, let's say somebody says I pay $1,500 a month. Okay, well, you know that $1,500 a month, if it's invested in the stock market over X amount of years, you do know that that makes your landlord a millionaire. So when you're telling me you can never afford to buy a house and you're not even trying, what you're also saying, unfortunately, is that you are at the same time buying a house for your landlord. You're making your landlord rich. I'm not making fun of anybody. If you're a renter, don't feel bad. This is not designed to make you feel bad. This is just designed to sort of make you think. Like, not so much about what you're gonna do, it's sort of what you're gonna try to do, right? Like, there's a difference between somebody who doesn't buy a home because they just didn't try and didn't care, versus somebody who says, well, I'm at least gonna do my best. I'm at least gonna research it. I'm gonna go study and learn how to do it so that if I can save up enough money for a down payment, I'm gonna make that move. Right? So there's a difference between sitting on the couch and at least trying to get to the refrigerator to get some food. Okay? So second thing, horse and jockey. Okay? So if you are an employee and you work for someone who owns the business, then they're the jockey, and again, you're the horse. They own the company grows, they get all that value, all that growth, all those excess profits and et cetera from your work, and you get to, spend, 50,000 hours away from your kids and die at your desk. And then they replace you, they carry your dead body away, they replace you within a week and act like you were never there. Yeah. Horse and jockey. When you talk about another part of the economic system, you've got producers and you've got consumers. Consumers buy things, right? Producers make things for consumers to buy. The producers are the jockeys, the consumers are the horse. A large percentage of the American economy is driven by consumer spending. If you go study things like Nielsen ratings and things like that, and you look at the Nielsen studies, they will tell you that black people are loved by corporations because they love to consume. They love to spend. Is it our fault? No. It's not our fault that it got this way, but it is our job to fix it. And when you go to YouTube and you watch videos like How to Sell to the Negro, which actually was made by Ebony Magazine. Ebony Magazine was trying to get white corporations to sponsor the magazine. So they're like, look, here's how you sell stuff to black people. Here's how, the Negro likes quality. And the Negro likes, don't make the Negro feel like he can't afford it or he'll get offended. Like, watch the video, it's really good. It's really good. It's not no disrespect to them, but it's very educational in terms of understanding how the pimp game works in the economic system. And I'm not saying that you should never be a consumer. Everybody consumes at some point. I'm not saying you should never be a renter. A lot of people rent. I'm not saying you should never work for another person. A lot of people do that. And sometimes they do it, for a while. What I'm saying is that you can't have it be a one-sided equation all the time. You see, because when they study the wealth gap in America, the wealth gap in America is growing to a level that it hasn't been in at least 100 years. The wealth gap is growing and growing and growing, and the rich are getting richer and richer, and working class and poor are staying flat or going down. The gap is growing. Did you know that the vast majority of that gap can be defined by one thing? Stock market participation. Wealthier people and people who become wealthy, not people who start wealthy, I'm talking about people who become wealthy, are people who consistently invest in the stock market. Now you might say, well, gosh, that's for rich people. Only rich people know how to do that. No. I know a lady who grew up so poor that they didn't even own a refrigerator. She said yeah, we used to keep our food on the porch in that winter when we didn't have a refrigerator, and then eventually somebody felt sorry for us and bought us a refrigerator for the summertime. And here's the thing. So when she grew up, the only thing her parents did, her mother was a teacher, and teachers didn't make that much. They still don't. And her father also was a smart man. So they had her reading a lot. She'd be in the library a lot. So she became a good student, made good grades, and got a good job, or got a good opportunity to go to college. So she goes to college on scholarship, graduates with her bachelor's degree, and then gets a master's degree, and then gets her first job. And when she gets her first job, she tells her father, she says, they offered me this thing called a 401k. How much money should I put it in? And her father said, oh, just max it out. Whatever the max is, put the max in. So again, she didn't know anything about money or investing. So she said, okay, well, my dad said max out my 401k, so I'm gonna max out my 401k. And then when it came time to get a place to live, her dad said, yeah, you can rent for a while, but save your money and buy you something, buy you a home. That's very important. So she did what her dad told her. She knew nothing about money, nothing about finance. Money is not interesting to her. And so she did what her dad said. She bought a house, and the house was maybe about $200,000. It was a while back. And the house value went up over time. Now it's worth about $500,000. And so one day I was talking to my friend, and I said, you know, I think that you might be a millionaire now. And she said, Boyce, what are you talking about? I'm not a millionaire. And I was like, yeah, I think you might be. I think, tell me more about where you are financially. And she said, Boyce, I don't even know anything about money. Like, you study money, you talk about money. I don't know anything about money. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have to actually know about money to be a millionaire. It's all about your habits, right? And so what we did was I said, okay, to be a millionaire, that means that if I take all the things you own, all your assets, and subtract everything you owe, subtract your liabilities, if that number's above $1 million, then you are a millionaire. And I said, okay, how much is your house worth? She said, about $500,000. I said, okay. I said, how much is in your 401k now? You started doing that back in 07 or so. And she said, yeah, I got lucky. I didn't know this, but I started investing right at the bottom of that crash. And I said, yeah. I said, you were very lucky, because at that time, John Rogers, who's a billionaire in Chicago, wrote an article about how many trillions of dollars black people lost because they ran away from the stock market right when it went down. And the people that stayed made a killing. I said, yeah, you were very lucky. I said, how much is in there now? She said, about $650,000. I said, okay. And I said, you don't own a business or anything. So she wasn't an entrepreneur, none of that stuff. She wasn't into that type of stuff. So I said, okay, $500,000 plus $650, well, that's $1.15 million. I said, well, how much is your debt? She said, I still have a little bit of student loan debt, about $20,000. I said, that's all your debt? I said, okay, so $1.15 million minus $20,000, is that above or below $1 million? That's above. I said, you are a millionaire. And I told her exactly what type of millionaire she was. I said, you're what they call an automatic millionaire. David Bach wrote a book called The Automatic Millionaire, in which basically he was talking about all these regular people who look just like you and I, who have basic, simple habits that put them in a millionaire position. So, for example, when we teach the kids in our Black Millionaires of Tomorrow program, we like to use acronyms to teach kids, because our long-term strategy is that we don't really fight for silly things like equality and all that. I don't care about black people being equal. I'm trying to win. Like, I don't fight for equality. I'm a Dr. Claude Anderson student. I believe in powernomics. I don't know. The 49ers did not play the Super Bowl to tie the game, right? They came there to try to win. They didn't win, but they don't nobody play a game to try to tie. So I don't do all equality and inclusion and all that. No, I don't want you to decide if you're going to include me. I don't want to beg you to include me in anything. I'd rather go just build something, and then you can beg me if I want to include you. Okay? Seriously, I just think that you are too strong to let them trick you into being weak. Just too strong to trick you into being weak. So we talk to our kids about getting ahead of the game. Our belief, for example, is that in order for black people to win the economic game, and some families will do that. There are probably some families in this room where your children, grandchildren, and or great-grandchildren will be multi-millionaires because of choices you're making now and decisions you're going to make today. And what we tell the kids is that we believe that every child in our community should go to business school at the age of 7. Well, and people say, well, what do you mean business school at the age of 7? That doesn't mean... No. Think about this. You got your kids learning how to play basketball at the age of 7. They're becoming the best football players in the world at the age of 7. Since when is that working out for us? Are we really Is it working out for us as a people that we've got millions of little black boys who are great basketball players but can't make a penny playing basketball? And we certainly have an oversupply of 40-year-old rappers. Seriously, no disrespect. No disrespect. I mean, I got friends that are rappers. I love my rapper friends, but 90% of them ain't making no money, man. That should be your hobby, bro. Seriously. So my argument is basic. I'm like, if you can spend all this time and money, thousands of hours to train to be a great football player, and all this money trained to be good at basketball, and all this money you spend to sending her to cheerleading camp, then why not give her a future? Why not give her an opportunity to succeed economically in a country that is designed for her to fail? Why don't we as a community commit to creating a generation where we have more entrepreneurs and investors than any other group of people on earth? Seriously. We need an army, man. We need an army. You know, like I admire, I don't have any ill will toward the Jewish community. I don't, but I talk about them all the time. But not in a negative way. Don't get me wrong. I'll talk about like the Hollywood agenda and some of the weird stuff that's going on. I'll talk about that, but I don't spend a lot of time complaining. I peep game, I pay attention, and I study. And one of the things I really would love is I would love for their community to one day in 50 years or so, in a couple of generations, look at our community and say, wow, how did they do it? How is it that every little black child wants to run a business? How is it that wait, you mean the stock market participation rate for black people is 90%? You know, you can buy stock. In fact, everybody in here today, if you haven't done it yet, just get on your phone and open up a Cash App. Cash App is easy. Robinhood Stash Acorns. There's many, many apps out there. And just buy yourself a few shares of stock. It ain't hard. It takes 2 minutes. And then just auto set it to your bank account. And I'm not telling you to go out and invest $1 million. Just whatever it is that you spend on fast food, spend the same amount on your future. Never invest more money in Popeye's chicken than you invest in your future. Seriously, if you spend more money, pay attention now, most people spend $3,000 a year on fast food. So if you spend more money on fast food than you spend investing in your own future, then why in the hell would you think you're going to have a future? Why would you, if you're spending more time and energy doing other things than you are learning how to build your own wealth, then why would you think you'd have any wealth? I mean, if I want to be a great basketball player, I spend time on the basketball court. Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest basketball players in the world, the Black Mamba, and I knew a little bit about Kobe long before he died, and I remember I knew a guy that played basketball with Kobe in Philly, and he said, gosh, that guy was always on the basketball court. He said, we used to play this game. It was like 21, except the first person who scores wins. So it was a very short game. And he said, I played Kobe probably 50 times, and he never let me win once. I never scored against him one single time because Kobe was that intense. He would not let you have one basket, even out of sympathy. And so, why is he the greatest basketball player on earth, or one of the greatest, one of the top 3 or 4, whatever your ranking is? Well, because he spent his time on the basketball court. So, my question to you as black people, this is very logical, is why would we think that we could actually have wealth if we don't have wealth-related conversations? If we're not putting time into learning about wealth, if we're not teaching our kids about wealth. I remember when I grew up, we would talk about money every now and then. And what do you think they would say when I say, well, I'd like to go make some money? What would they say? Get a job. Is that it? Is that it? I mean, really? I don't know if anybody else has ever played sports. Anybody else ever played sports? When the only answer you can give your child about making money is get a job, that's like playing basketball when you got one move. All you know how to do is dribble up and do a left-handed layup, and that's it. Like that, you can't. Kobe Bryant did not have one move. Kobe Bryant had 1,000 ways to get the ball in the basket. Right? So our children should have 1,000 ways to figure out how to make extra income, and it shouldn't just be get a job. And so when we're talking to the kids, one of the things we give them, one acronym we give them is we tell them to keep your poise. P-O-I-S-E, keep your poise. Poise stands for producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. And our kids memorize that because those are the people who are winning in American society. If you look at where the money goes and who has the most money, and I don't have to repeat that here because you got Silicon Valley right across the street, and we know about the racism, we know about all of that, right? We know about white privilege and all that's real, it all exists. But I will also tell you that I know plenty of people from our community whose parents trained them on two key things, business and technology, who are also multimillionaires themselves because they got that foundation. We have 3 kids in our house. And in our house, the 3 kids, I mean, first of all, they got 2 college professors running the house. So hopefully they ain't gonna be too stupid, right? that's very, and they don't even think that that's a big deal. They're just like, yeah, you're always preaching. But, you know, when we talk to them pretty much about business and technology. And I say, that's where all the money's at. The 16-year-old, he likes really fancy cars. He knows all the Ferraris and like if I say, what kind of car is that? He'll tell me exactly what kind of car it is, what model it's on. And I said, well, you know, a lot of these cars that you like, they cost like $250,000. And I said, you know that, you know, regular working people can't afford a $250,000 car. I said, but we're sending you to this math and science school. It's a free school, it's a public school, but you have to apply to get in. So you had to have a certain test score to get in. And I said, you know, you got a lot of classmates that really know technology like you do, and they also know business. And a lot of your classmates are going to become multimillionaires. In fact, one of the founders of YouTube went to his school or something, right? And that is kind of how I think education has to be shifted. It doesn't mean that you don't go to college. But let me tell you something about college that's really getting black people into a lot of trouble. Here's the problem with college, and I love the university experience. I've been a college professor for 25 years. I've taught at University of Kentucky, Indiana University, Syracuse University, the Ohio State University, and the University of Rochester, and I taught in China. So I love the idea of college. The first book I ever wrote was called Everything You Ever Want to Know About College, because I want our kids to not just go to college, but I want them to be at the top of the class. That's what I believe in to the core of my heart. I still believe in that. But here's a problem you have with college. The cost of tuition has skyrocketed. It's gotten insanely high. Back in the day, 30 years ago, you could go to college, get a couple jobs, and pay your own tuition. Now you can't do that. It's not possible. So here's what's happening. Okay, so you get 100 black students that all go to college. 52 of those students are not going to graduate. But they're going to graduate with debt, or they're going to leave with debt, but they won't leave with a degree. So half of those students are going to have debt with no degree, and that debt it almost never gets repaid, right? So of the half that do graduate, now these are the successful Negroes. This is explaining the wealth issue. This is explaining that wealth going to zero problem. Of the half that graduate, over half of that half are going to default on their student loans. So 75% of all black people that go to college either don't graduate or can't pay back the debt. Do you understand what that means? Here's what that means. Here's the dynamic. So the universities are getting paid. You go out here and look at any university that's got a lot of students, and they're probably gentrifying neighborhoods and buying up entire blocks and hiring all these people, and they got extra money because they're literally the Pablo Escobars of education. They've got so much money that's just stacked to the ceiling. That's what's happening. And a lot of this is black wealth, because we're trained to believe that traditional education is the pathway to success. That's what I was raised on. That's what a lot of you are raised on. Okay, what else is happening? That black college graduate who can't repay their student loan debt, who got the degree, and they're pissed off because they spent $200,000 to get the degree that got them a $40,000 a year job, and they're sitting with all this debt. And it just very depressing, right? Some of the people might be in this room. I don't know if anybody want to do a confession. But I'm not making fun of you. I promise I'm not making fun of you. I'm explaining something so you can understand what's really happening now. So you get the debt, you default on the debt, and when you default on the debt, that ruins the credit score, which inhibits your ability to jump the wealth fence and to go from being a renter to being an owner. That keeps you from jumping the fence of going from employee to employer by starting that business, right? It keeps you from jumping those fences that allow you to get onto the other side of that horse and jockey situation. The horse never gets to be a jockey because they kind of locked you in to that economic slavery through the student loan debt. So the people that are going to actually have the greatest likelihood of surviving this economic problem that really affects the entire country, not just black people, are actually, ironically, not going to be the educated Negroes. Those of us who went to college and got master's degrees and PhDs, MDs, JDs, and all these other letters behind our name that make us feel like we're better than somebody else. Those aren't going to be the people that are actually going to have the best chance of surviving this economic problem. The people that have the best chance of surviving are going to be the people that have simple values, the simple values that your ancestors had before integration. You know, the values where you remember, anybody have the grandma who tells you, like, don't spend too much of your money, make sure you save, 10% to the Lord, 20%. Yeah, right? Like my grandma, my grandma, rest her soul, Felicia, I talk about it all the time. My grandmother is not a person that's going to end up in $100,000 in debt chasing waterfalls. She's not going to do that, right? My grandma was a person who was a single mother who had 5 kids, no husband, and raised these kids and never made more than $22,000 a year, only had an associate's degree, and never ever once did I ever see her have to borrow money. Never once did I ever see her in a situation where she didn't have everything she needed. She always had perfect credit. She always had 0 debt. And in fact, when she died, her arrangements were made precisely all the way down to the color of the dress that she wanted to be buried in. And that is because she had these values that were deeply rooted in our community, this conservatism, if you want to call it that, not aligning this with the Republican Democrat situation, but that sort of simple nature that led her to be financially secure. And if you look around and you look at people, you go from my grandma to a Warren Buffett, one of the richest human beings on the planet, he had a lot in common with my grandmother. Very careful with money, very intelligent with money, didn't do stupid things with money. And so ultimately, a lot of what happens with money, and I'll tell you about a conversation I had with my grandma before she died. I remember that when I got my PhD in finance, and I really knew a lot of stuff. Like, to get the PhD, you really got to go through a lot of training. It's a lot of math theories and everything else. And so I learned everything at a certain level. And I was asked to write this article for Essence Magazine, and I didn't want to really make it overly complex. So I called my grandmother to say, what are your philosophies on money? How do you kind of look at money? And I remember one of the biggest takeaways from that conversation was she said, Coco is my nickname. When I got my PhD, they called me Dr. Coco. And she said, Coco, what happens with your money comes down to how you think. She said, a person who is a spender, if you give them more money, they're just going to spend more money. And a person who's a saver, if you give them more money, they're going to save more money. And that's when I realized that a lot of the things that we make complicated are actually